So before we go on to any new topic, has anything occurred in the in the break to anyone concerning what we've been talking about that you could make a contribution or ask by asking a question? Or anybody had anything happen in you? All right then. Yes, at any rate, this worldwide shortage of memory. I was told yesterday that, of all things, my computer's a bit short of memory, you see, so we had to try and get a microchip to build up its memory. And I was informed that the factory in Japan that makes the resin for the microchip burnt down or something like that, and the whole world is in turmoil and it's disaster because they're all short of memory. Well, computers are another example of an extension of our own mentality, the extension of the dryness and lack of love of in our own selves. So when you get dry, when you get lack of love, and the only pastime most of the time is sex and thinking and violence and worry and problems, when that becomes the substitute for love, you've got to keep moving faster. And the body and the mind can't move fast enough to absorb, to keep us busy. So what we do is extend ourselves into computers, which can be guaranteed to keep us busier with more information and making more connections with in our spare time we can think day and night when we're not using the computer, and when we're using the computer thinks for us, so that there's no break in the 24 hours except for the time we're asleep. So computers are an extension of our own lovelessness. And this is going to continue to go on through all the dream of time, which only exists until you die. After you're dead, you don't have to worry about it, it's all finished. But the dream of time goes on. Now, the reality is that if the whole world lost its memory, then we'd be very close to love. Because the only reason man can't love you, woman, is because he's always thinking about it. And the reason that you can't love him is that you're always thinking about the fact that he can't love you. And that takes a lot of thinking. Now, if you lost your memory, of course, you wouldn't be able to remember your old lover. You wouldn't be able to remember your old pain, what your mother and father did to you, or any resentments that you hold in you. And that'd all go, and the screen would be blank. Horror of horrors. I've lost myself. Yes. When you lose yourself, you've always got me. Inside that body listening to these words. The place of love is me. The place of joy is me. The place of instantaneous knowledge of the love that I was singing about. That's me. That's the place of joy. That doesn't need any memory. That's the place of presence, which is the present. Now, I ask you, where's your memory gone in deep dreamless sleep? When you are never happier in your entire life, what's happened? You've lost your memory. That's all. Deep dreamless sleep is purely the loss of memory. Isn't that amazing? There you have no problems, no unhappiness, and no memory. As soon as you wake up, you enter your memory, and all your burdens descend upon you. And then you pursue the day in all your spare time. As soon as you have a spare moment, you start thinking. While you're performing any action, walking along the street, you're just the action. No problem. No memory. Great. Memory, in the sense that I'm talking about, it means attachment to memory. It means the irresistible need to remember what's not necessary for the moment. That's what memory is we're talking about. And the sooner you give up your memory, the sooner you are awake and conscious in deep dreamless sleep. That's the state of the master. That's the state of enlightenment. And that's the state available to everybody, but not to myself. Myself, which is just hidden just under that body listening to these words, just inside my body is myself. Myself consists of memory, but it's emotional memory. There is a mental memory, let's say, an image memory, let's say, but its basis, its substance, is the emotional memory, that sticky stuff. And that is the substance of all my imagery. Now, if I will only cut off mentally from my emotional memory, I will start to lose my mental images. The substance of my memory, this emotion, is going to get very, very uncomfortable, because this is myself. My memory, my emotional memory, is myself, where I've recorded all my past experiences, particularly hurts and pains. That's my emotional memory. For instance, if you remember your car, you don't get emotional, do you? I mean, there's nothing wrong with remembering your car. It's whether you're attached to your car and it's been stolen, and you're attached to it. That's when this stuff down below there starts to seethe again, because you were attached to the memory of your car, because you suddenly thought, my car's been stolen, and this stuff down below started to work. Well, if your car's been stolen, that's an actuality and fact for now, and the only thing you can do is everything you do, whatever you need to do about it, with the police, etc., then you don't think about it anymore. Because if you think about your car's been stolen, you'll get this substance down there of all the deprivation you've suffered in the past where you've lost anything. That old stuff will start to react on the new situation where your car's been stolen. So even if you've lost a child and your car's been stolen and you think that you're dependent on it, the loss of the child is likely to be projected on the loss of the car. And you'll feel even more pain, and you'll say, I don't know why I'm so disturbed about losing my car. Why? It didn't mean that much to me, but I'm so disturbed about it. What's wrong? Because you're putting a past loss, past more emotional loss, a more virulent loss, onto the present, which is what the self does. So the best thing is to not be attached, or to be as least attached to anything in your life. That does not stop the love, for instance, that is providing the breathing now. There is a love that is providing sufficient air for the lungs now. We, of course, wipe this off as, well, that's just natural. Well, sure, it's natural. But finally, that's love. There's no memory in it. But a bit of mental memory doesn't matter, but there's no memory. You don't have to remember to breathe, do you? It's instinctive. So what's instinctive is pure. That's pure memory. Instinct, which is in all the creatures of the earth, including the human monkey, is natural. You don't have to remember because it's already done, programmed into the system. But we insist on remembering our emotional self. And we go into that. And as soon as you go into that can of worms, finish. You are likely to excite this self, and it will drag you in, and then it will turn into a tunnel, let's say, and you will have to go from one end of the tunnel to the other, which might take a day or two. So you get emotional this end, and it might take 2 days to get through it, if it's a deep emotion. And you'll notice that this is the tunnel, like the tunnel of death. For being in that tunnel of emotion is like death, living death. Not right death, like deep dreamless sleep, but living death. And what you start, you have to go through then. Sometimes, though, it's not as deep as you thought, and you can pop up after a couple of hours and say, well, it's all gone now. Whew, thank goodness. So it is best, do not get into the habit of going into yourself. Values. What values are you concerned with? Now let's have a look. I want to look at value. I want to see what value is for us all here in our lives. We hear value spoken about in so many contexts. But what is value? Now, is there any value you can be concerned with as your total life in accountancy? Is there any value? What's the value in accountancy? Now, I'm only saying accountancy because, as I would say, is there any value in being in a motor mechanic? Is there any value in being anything that you are, whatever you are? For instance, Charles? What are you? A lawyer. Is there any value in being a lawyer? Now, you've got to ask this question because where lawyers and accountants exist, there is a sense of value. But it's not the value I am concerned with in the body listening to these words. Lawyers and motor mechanics and writers and all the activities that we indulge in are an outer concentric from the real value of your life. Now, what's the value of business? It has no value unless every moment it contributes to your freedom from unhappiness. Why are you here? What's the value in your being here? There's no value in your being here unless it contributes to you being free of your emotional self, your selfishness, your unhappiness. No value at all. For the only value is to be free, which is to be free of my unhappiness. Is that true? Now, accountancy, motor mechanics, books, all the things that we engage in give a partial freedom. That's because they exist in a concentric out from the center of my life. Here is the center of my life. I have my index finger up. That's the center of my life in the body, this body listening to these words. The first concentric out from me is what I love, is my love. Well, what do you love? If I love an activity, that's fine, but that's, let's say, the second concentric out. What do you love? If I love myself, I will keep thinking about myself. I'll consider myself. That is, I'll consider my guilt, how moody I am today, how unhappy I am today. That will be my first concentric. I love myself. Now, what do you love? What's your first concentric? Even the children, you see, are a concentric out from the first concentric. You can love your children. But unless the children reflect, and you reflect to them, absence of unhappiness, then it doesn't have a value for you. It can have a value in that you're endeavouring to make it love more. But then you shouldn't have any problem in doing that. So the first concentric out from the centre that I am, my awareness, is my love. My one value. What's your one value? Is it to be free every moment, like now, of unhappiness, of self-reflection? Is it? Because if you stick to that value, in any situation, you'll be able to relate to that value. And indeed, you'll have to do the best that you can in an external event. But you stick to that value. First of all, I must not love myself. Now, I know it's a nice therapy these days that I have to love myself more. I say, I must not love myself. What I love, I think about. When in truth, if I love, I don't think. And I'll always think about myself. Now, is there any need for you to think about yourself? Could you give me a situation? Perhaps someone could give me a situation where we can go into this a little deeper. Because it's not an easy one to get. The whole world is in love with itself. And I'm coming along trying to get you, by in practical ways, not just talking ideals, to grasp what it is not to love myself, but to love me, the truth, the living truth, the love, the reality inside that body listening to these words. That's me. But the world hasn't known the difference between myself and me, and nobody has ever told them. And so the whole world is confused about this, so it's easy to become confused. So let's open this up. Now, the first concentric is my life, the value of my life. What is the value of my life? In any situation, if I can only relate to that value, I will be true. I put that value first. Why am I here? Well, do you really, not just intellectually, are you really here to be free? Are you really here to be free? I'm asking you, really, to be free. To be free of myself. Now, if you're going to think about yourself, how hurt you are, what he did or she didn't do, or how guilty you are, or how rotten you are, you're not free. You are loving yourself. What we're trying to do is to get this almost invisible central ring, the first ring around my being, my intelligence, I who am here. Now, with the children again, if I consider myself, I will say, well, I haven't got time, or I can't be bothered. That's considering myself. If I say I love my children, if I dare to say I love my children, the value of that love surely is to have the time. To have the time to what? Not to have the time to indulge them, but to have the time to correct any indulgence, to have the time to sit to have the time to explain in terms of actual reality of life what life is, to have the time to answer questions about love as straightly as I can from my own straight life, in which I've realized that to be free is the most important thing at any time, my son or daughter, and to be free at any moment is to be free of that unhappiness that wants something. Why don't you tell me what you want? I will endeavour to give it to you because I love you. But if you just want for excitement or want for want's sake, I'm never going to give it to you. So you might as well face that. But if you need it, why wouldn't I? I love you. I'll give you anything that you need. But if you don't need it, then you'll have to listen to me, and you'll have to say, no, Mum, or Dad, I don't really need it. Well done. Now, as soon as you do that, you start to find the restlessness and the discontent starts to stop in you, my son or my daughter. And you'll find that children, yes, become more real. But if I don't speak to them about this, well, naturally they get programmed like we did. Nobody spoke to us like this, though everybody loved us. Not to question that your mother and father loved you, but did they love you enough to be true to the value of their life, to keep me or myself, or me free of myself? I must be true to the things in my life. If I have children, to keep me free of myself, to keep me from being unhappy in myself, I have to be true to my children. Otherwise, I'll lie awake at night. The thought will come up and say, I'm not happy about the children. That's because I have not been true to them as I know I could be. So it is about my partner, or my lover, anything, my job. I have to be true to it. Why am I in this job? I'm in this job, like the lady about her children, to do the best that I possibly can. Despite all the other personalities around me who don't want to do the best they can, who want to complain and blame, I am paid to do the best that I can. That's the first thing I am there for. If I am restless or discontented, I must take some action or give it up. I must be true to the situation. Anybody want to take that any further, please? Yes, Julie, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. With my daughter, the sort of thing of what she wants has been coming up quite a lot recently, and has even caused some disagreements between my partner and I on what she should have and what she wants. And I'm not quite clear with what you're saying. Things like if she says, I want to go to the disco, which she doesn't need to go to the disco.
Yes.
But the things like I feel, although it's perhaps not a healthy place,
Yes,
in a lot of ways, and it's only the world, that she needs to go in one way to get her experience and be with her friends, and that just by stopping that, stopping her going, it will come out later when she does get her
indeed.
way anyway.
And I trust that nobody thinks that I should think that I'm saying or advocating suppression. I advocate a wisdom. Every child has to experience the world as it is presented to them and the mother and parents, for the parents filtering of what is best or what is right. That's the parents' job, to give some sort of reflection from their position to the child. But they cannot and must not, if I use that word, try to protect the child from experience. As you say, just precisely as you said. If you see that she needs to go to the disco to be with her friends, then indeed that is the truth. The thing is, though, that what I would suggest in such a situation is that when she comes home the next day, and when it's not like an inquisition, But when it's right, you sit down to talk because you must talk to children, especially teenagers, and stop their momentous run through the room, and out the other side. You must try to talk and open up a dialogue with them without trying to seem to be doing that, and by saying, well, how was the disco? And because you will have spoken about life on other occasions, you'll be able eventually to say, well, what would you tell me? What's the value of it for me? Do you think I should go? Do you think it would do me some good? And that's not to criticise the good that they say they've had. It was great. It was really great. And we danced and jumped. That's good, yeah. And eventually you could say, well, did you notice anything about the music or the sound? Was it, the sound? Yeah, particularly the sound, because it's always up so that the next human race is going to have hardly any eardrums. But you can have an intelligent conversation in which they can give you a feedback, and they say, yes, it's strange, yes, you're right, that's how it is. And you don't have to make it an inquisition, but there's a dialogue in which the real life is brought in to the life of glamour. Because that is the life of glamour. And this is a glamorous age, isn't it? We can't deny the glamour of the movies, the glamour of the videos, all of them, the rockers, the everything, the ordinary videos, the love stories, it's all glamour, glamour being what is outside the normal human experience, but which seems to reflect it. In other words, imagination. And so, yes. So I had a lady write to me from England the other day about she's had her child at a Montessori school or the other one, Steiner school, and circumstances are making it so that he's got to go to the state school, and she doesn't want that, and yet she has the wisdom to see, well, am I denying him his experience? And the answer is, always go by the practical. Don't fight against the practical. If the practical determines that he can't no longer go to the special school of your choice, and has to go to the state school, if the practical indicates that and you can't do anything about it, then go with the practical. But if you can do something about it, then do it. But if you can't, then go with it. In any case, it is good. You will find that the practical, once you can't do anything else and you're not attached to what you want to do, and you follow the practical, it is the practical as the unfoldment of what is necessary. And so it will be necessary, if that boy goes to the state school, to go and experience the state school with ordinary boys. Otherwise, it's likely to get into one of those hothouse situations, isn't it? But again, you don't make a decision. You watch the practical. Now, in your life, if you go by the practical, I tell you, finally, it will be the only determining factor for you that is necessary. Either you can do it or you can't do it. If you can't do it, you can't do it. That's practical. You don't think about it. You don't wish, you don't want, you don't pray for. You let it go until you can look again and say, yes, I can do it. Then you do it. So what is it in your life? Anyone want to mention? In your life, the practical. There are some times, of course, when you get two parallels, it's coming up towards a decision like that. A decision always being a moment in which the two converging lines cross. Now, the point where they cross is the moment of decision. That's the moment, the future that's coming. If you try to make a decision from a moment that's 3 or 4 days away, or a month away, or even an hour away, you're likely to get confused, because it hasn't crossed the point. When it crosses the point, something will happen. The decision will be made for you, or a decision will be made or won't be made. So often people are trying and worrying about what to do about their job. I don't know whether to take this job. I've got to make a decision in 10 days. I don't know what to do. And they exercise themselves and all their children and their parents and everybody trying to get advice. When it's sufficient to get all the advice you can, but not to indulge yourself in shopping around for unnecessary advice. But when you've got all the advice, practical advice, and you can't make a decision what to do, sit back, enjoy your life. Because a part of you will be vigilant to see if the situation's changed and you've got some more facts. But wait. And the knowledge of what is best will happen without any decision, or as the moment comes you will find that your body does this or that. The thing to do is to avoid decisions as much as possible. Decisions make everybody unhappy. Decisions are the other side of choice. While you have choice, you are going to be confused and likely to be unhappy. When you have no choice, what a relief. And so when Gabrielle says, I'm facing not wanting anything, is she not facing giving up the choices? Having no choice? Now, I have no choice, and I don't want one, thank you. I will not have a choice. If I have to make a decision or appear to make a decision, I will make it in the moment on the biggest yes. That means no certainty and no promises, for I can promise nobody anything. I can only say what I say, do what I do, and not be attached to anything. Therefore, my life is about giving up my choice. Then I am free. For in deep dreamless sleep I give up all my choices, don't I? It is only when I come up from deep dreamless sleep, up from the psyche, and enter that area of myself that I start to dream and look at all the things that go on when I'm dreaming. Some are good, some are bad, some are nothing to speak of, something or other things to speak of and relate to. So much going on, it's like the main street. Yet when I sink beneath that into deep dreamless sleep, am I any more or less alive? I'm asking you, am I any more or less alive when I am in deep dreamless sleep? Am I any more or less value? Could it be that I am never happier or more content when I am deep dreamless sleep? Is that not a value? Is it only because I think I'm alive, because I'm remembering all the time, that I enjoy this so much while I do, and then want to get out of it as fast as I can as soon as things go against me? You not see that deep dreamless sleep is death? That there's a lot more death in deep dreamless sleep than living? That it only lasts 70 years, living. And then it's finished forever and ever and ever, gone. That's deep dreamless sleep that nobody has ever and ever can describe, because there's nothing to know there. No memory, that's all. Take away the memory and you're living, waking, deep dreamless sleep. A miracle. But that's the enlightened state. No choice necessary anymore. If decisions have to be made, they are made on the biggest yes. But only at the last minute. This is the state of freedom. No reference to the past, or a minimum of reference to the past, as some sort of guide to the present. If you look at any religious teacher, and every religious teacher has to be in the past, If you look to that for guidance, you are looking to the past for guidance to the present. You'll become confused. You will never be responsible. I tell you now, there is no Jesus. There is no Christ. I tell you now. There is only God or the unknown, or deep dreamless sleep. And that is inside this body now. Deep dreamless sleep, in which there are no problems, nothing to speak of, nothing to think of, nothing to pray for, nothing to wish for, nothing to choose. That is inside everybody this moment. Now, boom, here it is, there. You put Christ into that, you get an idea. You get a choice, a selection. The choice is yours. You might choose the wrong way. If you're a Hindu, what are you going to do? You're going to get confused because you don't know whether to choose Christ or you don't know whether to choose Krishna. Get rid of the whole lot of them. There is only God. And God is me inside that body now, in which it is like deep dreamless sleep, where there is no movement, no thought, nothing but the everlasting presence of that indescribable thing called life, which is me. Listening to all these words now in that body. A stillness, a silence, an absence. Are you hearing me, man and woman? An absence. Now stillness is the way. But stillness is only the way. While there's a road, you can go off it. You can go off the road. And that's why Krishnamurti said that truth is a pathless land. But I tell you that stillness is the way, is the road to absence. And absence has no path, no path in it. Absence is the truth that Krishnamurti was talking about. The pathless land is absence. Absence of anything, any thought, any wanting, anything. That is absence. To reach this place, the path is stillness. Stillness is now. What you are going to feel as unstill in the practicality of this moment inside that body now is the past. Feel it? The best part of it, to describe the best part of the past, is sensation. Do you feel a sensation? Say in your hands, in your stomach and anywhere. Just pure sensation. That's about the best part of the past that there is. Anything other than that, where it starts to get any more content than sensation, becomes self or unhappiness. Emotion. And so, the teaching that I teach, and that is fundamental really to all teachings, although they don't get it straight, is first of all to be still, to quieten myself by the presence of my intellect or my intelligence looking into my body and seeing this rather swirling, moving, emotional self there. And by not wavering with my intelligent perception of it like I'm doing now in that body, as I speak about it, you are already doing it. By looking at it with my intelligence, it starts to quieten. It becomes more still. But of course more still is not still, isn't it? But it's more still, and that's what the path is. That's what the so-called spiritual path is, to become more still. More still. Feel it? More still. So stillness is the way. And eventually I still it down and down and down until I reach pure sensation. Now, pure sensation is what we could call like instinctive. It's the first or last created thing. So I still all myself down to the pure sensation of myself. And that's what meditation's supposed to be about. It's not an end in itself, meditation. It's purely bringing some quietude into the restless, discontented one, myself. And then I reach sensation. Like now. There's only now to reach it. And in my presence here, the speaker, you will be able to do that much more easily. Now, to get through sensation, I have to go more and more into nothing. Because sensation consists of the equivalent to little specks of sand being dropped onto a surface. Feel it in yourself? Right. There's no emotion attached to it, it's just pure sensation. The base of the body. That's it. Right. Now, between each speck of sand, or speck of sensation, is space. Nothing. Absence. And what the living process, the meditative process, the spiritual life, and the state of being that I teach is about, is to switch over from perceiving the something, the little speck, and perceiving or being the nothing in between each speck. Now, while you're perceiving the sensation, this cannot happen because the perceiving of the sensation creates the sensation. But as I get stiller and just rest in the sensation actually disappears, and I go in and become the space between the specks. In that state, I am in the state of being. I have left existence. I am in deep dreamless sleep, although I am awake, or my eyes are open. The mind then wants to reflect on the nothing. Now, something can't reflect on nothing. So the mind then says, I've lost it. Because the mind can only reflect on something like the sensation. Got it? As soon as you start to go through sensation, the mind is disengaged, is of no use to you whatever. Like now, the stillness of being. As soon as you look, you will create the sensation. When you don't get attached to the looking, the sensation disappears and you just go into a stillness of being. Then the mind works and wants to know what's going on, and of course it can't, so it brings you up out of the stillness into being something like thought. So then you disengage from the mind as best you can, focus on the sensation, be easy, and you go through the sensation. No problem. So stillness is the way to the sense, to the pure sensation. And then I go through into the pathless land, the place of no choice, the place of absence. Don't allow the monitor to tell you what's going on. The monitor is the mind. You abandon the monitor when you go into the sensation, into the space. You must abandon everything. for that is like deep dreamless sleep, nothing to speak of, nothing to remember. Now when I speak of the human monkey, we have to go down through the past of the body, which is the substance of the creative, divine presence that I as man and woman am. I must go down through the stem. I must go back through time, through all the past, not as a thinking revelation of the past, but I must sink into my stem, into the creature, the human monkey. I must sink into that deep inside. I am going to have to go against all the human emotions that have been in the monkey since the monkey came into existence as the human monkey. I'm going to have to go into competition with other monkeys. So as soon as I encounter that emotion, I might have to stay there for some time, because it'll drive me into competing in my life. I'll be attached to competing, because that's already in the monkey. I'll be attached to jealousy. But when you bring when you bring self-consciousness, which the monkey does not have, the animal monkey doesn't have that, self-consciousness. When you bring self-consciousness into a monkey, you make the human monkey, which has self-conscious capability. It is because of our self-consciousness, our ability to reflect, that we see each other as we are. And we see each other as beautiful and nothing like monkeys. Because we can reflect on our own creativity and our own beauty in another. So I have to go down through the human emotions, but not all of them, only those that rise in my life, in this particular body, listening to these words, because I am not going to have to go through all the human emotions. But there are those that are my particular parcel or portion that I have to face on behalf of the great creativity of the divine, which is the man or woman that I am, the creativity that I am, grafted onto this temporary body. Now my creativity is nothing to speak of. So I have to go into nothing inside, behind the sensation. I've got to return to the nothing out of which I came. And I've got to do that while I'm actually in this animal body. It's an enormous thing to do. But then it's the only thing to do. And you are doing it. Now there's no thought here. Nothing to prove here. Nothing to doubt, nothing to fear, nothing to want. It's just a state of absence. And that is creativity. And that's the creativity that Krishnamurti used to speak about, and nobody really heard. For it is nothing. And in that nothingness, I am spontaneous. I am creative. I am what I am. Not wanting to be anything. Not trying to improve. Not trying to do. Just doing. Being. Absence. Therefore presence. like now. Now it is good to have the eyes open, as it is good sometimes to close the eyes. But it is good to have the eyes open to demonstrate that you can be in this place of absence with your eyes open. For then you'll be able to walk down the street, through the parks, with your eyes open, and still be in, or still be absent in this place of creativity, which is nothing to speak of. Then when that creativity, which is the divine intelligence, needs to express itself through this body, it will arise spontaneously. And I will be creative according to that, not according to what I wanted. But sometimes, or most of the times, to be creative, the thing that has been lost to the life on earth, although we all notice it, to be really creative is to be free of unhappiness at any moment. We notice it in some people, how joyous they are. And they're just natural, ordinary people. And it's pretty consistent in them. And we remark on it, isn't it? What a jolly lady, or what a jolly man. We enjoy that. Well, you mightn't be jolly. You just be what you are. But as long as you're free of unhappiness, there's something that comes out of you that contributes by the divine intelligence to all life around you. You don't have to try. And if you do anything, like even walk down the street, I tell you, it'll be creative. So stay in this place as often as you can. Practice it, like you are now. For stillness is the way, and absence is my place. All right, just close the eyes for a little while now. And sink into me, into this place of absence. Now, still staying in that place. In your own time, open your eyes and see your position. So in that place there's nothing, no position, absence. And out here you can see your position in space and time, marked by the partial appearance of your physical body. Good. Now, does anybody like to ask me a question about anything that we've talked about, or anything that has cropped up in you while we have been, or are being? Yes.
Barry, I would like to clarify what you said about happiness earlier on. You said something about not looking, don't think about your unhappiness, but then there was something that you said to do with your unhappiness, and I missed that bit. So actually, it was just.
I say, first of all, don't think about your unhappiness, because that will make you go into yourself and stir the emotions, and they'll put you around into orbit, on and on. The thing to do is to look into your life outside and see what is making me unhappy. That will be a real guide, whereas if I go into myself, I'll get into all emotional impressions. All right? If I look into my life, I'll see the reflection there. Yes. Now, this myself inside, that emotional self, is my acquired self. I've acquired that, picked it up since I was born, emotionally. The circumstances of my life are the real reflection of myself. And if I can only attend, instead of going into myself inside, this acquired self, attend to the real reflection of myself, which is straight and true, I will, by attending to that particular aspect of my life, or aspects of my life, I will actually deal with this acquired self. But if I go into my acquired self will make more of itself. Whereas by looking into my life with honesty and straightness, I will get a true reflection, not a discursive one, not a circular one, and that will reduce myself, my acquired self, my unhappiness. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, your name?
Spike.
Yes, Spike.
Could you address, you talked quite a lot about sort of single dimension in a way. Could you address the stillness that comes, which allows then one to move into another dimension through sort of psychic ability or whatever?
Righto. Yes, I'll address that. The whole of existence consists of everything that is out here in form, projected, that is every moment of sensory projection. And existence goes on inside the psyche, just inside, which includes the self that I've mentioned, all the emotions. And then, as part of that, is everything that the human mind has ever imagined. That goes quite deep. And it is irresistible in many ways, because it is a disembodied. It has no substance to it. It is more psychic or mental. So it has a great attraction for us. It's called what we would call it would be occult, would be another word for it, wouldn't it? Psychic and occult. Now, I'd like to quote for you what glamour means. Of all things, glamour is the Scottish version of the English word grammar, G-R-A-M-M-A-R, from the popular association of erudition that is profound knowledge, with occult practices. So it is occult practices, the working of magic, the entry into the psychic experiences that is glamour. And where I come from, a glamour is the most attractive delusion for man and woman. That is psychic experiences. Now it is true that on the way, let us say, to absence, everyone has to pass through a psychic band. There is the band of myself, which is a pretty heavy, substantive thing inside. And then there is a band of what could be called the psychic, occult. That is a description of the whole psyche. Now beyond the psyche is the spirit. The spirit is nothing to speak of or talk about. The closest thing you can get to the spirit is absence. Now in my own case, as in your case, I had to pass through the psychic band. Dealing with myself, going in through myself, and passing into, I had to pass through the psychic band in which I had many psychic experiences, as Spike is referring to, right? Visions, all those things. But I tell you that where I am in the spirit, nothing psychic ever happens inside of me. There are no other worlds, no other galaxies, no other existences. There is just the supreme silence of God's mind, in which there is nothing. So the thing to do is to get through that psychic band as fast as possible. You can't try to get through it, but you can not be waylaid by it. If you get waylaid by it, spiritualism, the White Brotherhood, Ascended Master, especially those channels, which is the big flavour of the, our decade or so. All those are psychic. They are glamour, and therefore they're almost impossible to resist. And the great thing of glamour is magic. So the big thing of the Christian religion is the magic of Jesus being able to heal people, and especially to rise from the dead. Big magic, that. And certain Eastern masters able to manifest birds or whatever it is that they manifest. How we love it. How we are amazed at psychic magic. But the only magic that I work, man and woman, in the spirit, is to get rid of your attachment to magic, to glamour, so that you can be absent and join me in the place where you already are, with me. And leave that stuff behind as fast as possible. It's awful. It's terrible. I was in a meeting in New York, and there was a very earnest and widely informed man there who'd read every religion and every occult practice and theosophy. He was really into it, reincarnation, all the Buddhist scene, and he said at the end of it, he said, if I'm hearing you rightly, You're saying that every tradition that I've ever read has no truth in it. Is that the truth? Is that what you're saying? And I said, yes, that's true. He said, how can you do that? How can you possibly do that? Are you the only one that's right? And I say, apparently. But you mustn't believe me. You mustn't believe me. But to talk of other universes is not true. There are no other universes. You've got the old scientific mind going in you, which has no value. If you're a scientist, what's the value of it to you? None. To your value of your life, the love, the absence of unhappiness, the value of being able to hear the birds sing any time without any moods or anger, that's value. What's science got to do with that? Nothing. Makes you go and study and make yourself emotional, miss half your life studying. Well, of course you've got to study out there. That's fair enough, but that's way, way out here. Let's not get it to the fundamental value. And say you can heal someone. I'll tell you now, only the created God heals anybody. And I could be healing 1,000 people at this moment. Only I wouldn't know about it. And that's all right by me. And you could be healing 1,000 people now. And that's all right. You won't know anything about it if you ever heal anyone. And you want to know something about it. You need to heal your selfish self. That's all. That's psychic nonsense. There is only one healer, and that is the great God, the divine. The utter and complete everything which is nothing. That's the great healer. You want something more? Then you have to suffer. You want a Jesus? Then you've got to suffer. You're going to have to be guilty. You're going to have to be a sinner. You want a Krishna? Oh, then you've got to work miracles. You've got to turn blue. You've got to do all those things, right? How about all these silly ideas of the human mind? In deep dreamless sleep, where are these universes? Come on. Where's Einstein's theory? Come on. When did you last think about it in deep dreamless sleep? Come on. You must give up your life of wanting and trying and wishing and hoping for to be your life. It's only the human mind's idea of what life is, and it's always thinking about something better than what is. This is life now. This is life now. And it goes this way. It doesn't go that way to tomorrow and everything. That all happens. But it goes profound down this way, south of south, into the never-lasting and the ever-ending. That's where it goes. And that's a value that is now. And is not dependent on knowing anything, because it is pure knowledge. And knowledge knows nothing, because it is knowledge itself. And that's absence. That's creativity. That's presence. That's the divine consciousness. In the midst of everything. Like now. So Spike, I'll just finish. Spike, could I answer any question that's arisen in you, please? Because I know the genuineness of your inquiry.
I think you've addressed most of the issues that come out of that. But my sort of previous understandings and readings have been that we're all on paths and sort of perhaps follow some Vedanta philosophy to a degree, where I can actually sort of accept, because my sort of self accepts this belief that we're on a sort of series of lives and there is life beyond life. And within that context, I accept there's a psychic barrier to move through. But I don't know if we all do it in one lifetime.
Well, you see, you're suggesting other lives. And that also is a human idea of the human mind. There is no other life but this one. But if you want another life, you can have it. That's the wonder of it. You see, there has to be, because the Buddha said there's nothing to go on. I am Buddha, by the way. Let me introduce myself. I'm not in the past. I am Buddha, Buddhi, the divine intelligence, as you hear from the way I speak and my great knowledge. As the Buddha says, there is nothing to go on. So how can any Buddhist ever believe in another life? But it is the wonder of the divine mind, which is nothing, that will reflect to you anything that you really want. And if enough men want other lives, future lives or past lives, then they can have it. And of course enough men do. So there is a thing called past lives and future lives. But they are a dream. They are an invention of the human mind and the psyche, the miraculous psyche. But they're a dream. And the whole point of where I come from is to wake up from the dream. To be awake. To not want anything. No survival. Because I'll only survive in a dream. That is purity. Simplicity. Enlightenment. No. So, all these things exist if you want them. It's pretty wondrous, isn't it? But how long do you want to dream? How long would you want this life to go on? This dream? Because this is a dream. Apart from the fact that it's going to end in about 8 hours' time. It's all going to come to an end in 8 hours. But apart from that, it's going to end for good in 50 or 60 years when you die. How long would you like this dream to go on? Because all dreams fade, finish. Because they're not strong enough to, they're not real enough to sustain themselves. Now, how long would you, listening to these words, like this life to go on? You know, my old mother, who died last year, aged 90, she used to say, she'd be 88, and she'd say, yes, so-and-so, so-and-so, yes, I'll be here, touch wood, you know. You're right, okay, Mum. Right. So touch wood mean a little guarantee that I'll be here, you know. She wanted to go on. She wanted to survive, like we all do. Everybody wants to survive. That's natural to want to survive. But eventually, my mother aged 90 and she was active and able to walk around at 90 and be jolly. She was jolly all the time, you know. She was no saint, but my goodness, she was a jolly woman. And she had to go into hospital, and her legs started to swell up, and the kidneys didn't work too well, and the hands all started to get the arthritis, and she had to go to hospital, and she could get up for a while, and then she couldn't get up. I ask you, man and woman, how long would you like this dream to go on? You don't think you're going to get like that, do you? Not while you think this dream's going to go on, you want it to go on. Sure, you don't want to end it. But I tell you, a day will come when you will not want to go on because the dream has ended. Just about. So do you think it's any different if you want to imagine another life? Do you think you're not being the same, you'll just repeat the same here? What are you going to do in another life? What are you going to do? Are you going to be a fisherman instead of an accountant? And do you think the fishermen are all happy all the time? What are you going to do? Are you going to be a great master or teacher? What for? They all end, they all disappear. They all finish. The dream of the master disappears. All into God, back into God. Come on. As fast as you can. Give up wanting to be anything and be what I am every moment. Free of unhappiness and allow that creativity to unfold and express itself. Allow that to happen. But it does mean cleaning up your past. It means, as the circumstances of my life are presented to me, I've got to face the past in them, because every circumstance is the past repeating itself in the present. So there's an element of past in it that I have not faced. So if it disturbs me, I've got to look in it with honesty and say, what is in this that I am seeing that's disturbing me? What am I not seeing? What am I not facing in this? Where am I not being honest in this relationship or this event? That's what it's there for. That's the psyche, reflecting itself in the actuality, and this is real. This dream is the realest dream of all. Anything you think about or imagine is way, way out. This is the real one, for now. Is that okay, Spike?
I hear what you're saying.
Good. Yes, that's all you got to do is hear and see, and let it work inside of you. That's right. Yes. Yes. Now, your name again?
Michael.
Yes, Michael.
Barry, I read in the Origins book that you say the purpose of creation is unknowable to man.
Is unknowable to me.
Unknowable to man, and it really disturbed me. And I often hear you say that knowledge is implicit.
Yes.
How does that go together?
The purpose of creation is unknowable to man. That is so. The closest we can get to it, or I can get to it, is for me to enjoy my life, to enjoy the creation as it unfolds as my life. That's the closest I can get to it. Now, when I get to that, to the enjoyment of my life as it is now, that very willing, or being willing to enjoy my life as it is now, revealing itself every moment, brings about a change in my life. It actually, by this movement of the psyche I was referring to earlier, the magic of the psyche, it changes the circumstances of my life. So that I take the past out of those circumstances and they start to appear to me as the present, and therefore they fulfill my needs. So whatever I need is provided for me in the circumstances of my life without me having to battle for it as in the past. See, that's what it brings about. That's using the divine psyche rightly. So as I enjoy my life more and more every moment, by not blaming or accusing others for ruining it or spoiling it, or blaming myself for spoiling it, if I give that up, a divine miracle happens in the psyche, which is God's pleasure. The circumstances of my life start to work for me instead of me having to work against them and fight. That's number one. Simultaneously, there grows in me, or as I descend into this state of joy, which becomes absence of wanting or trying or choice, because it's all provided for me, I discover knowledge which is not dependent on knowing anything. Now the human mind gets its excitement, and we all have this part of the human mind in the frontal part of the mind, of the brain. There's the human mind. And it gets its excitement and experience, and quite rightly so, out of knowing. That is, it sees something, and it relates to the past, and he says, that's like that. Or I saw that last week. Did you see that? Or isn't that like the moon? You know, the moon's something you saw yesterday. Isn't that like that? So this part of the frontal part of the mind compares everything in the present with the past, and that's called knowing. Now, knowledge, being implicit, has no reflection in it whatever. I just descend, and I have the knowledge. When I descend into this place, and I'm talking to as everybody in this room, as I descend into this place, I have a knowledge that needs no knowing. And the first sign of that, all of you have had, and I'll tell you what it is. in the midst of something going on that was rather unpleasant, you have said, yes, this hurts, or this is unpleasant, but I know it's right. That's implicit knowledge. Because your mind, if it reflected on it, says, as you have said, and as people have said to me 1,000 times, I know I shouldn't feel it's all right. I know, because my mind reflects on, oh, this shouldn't be happening to me, but, oh, this is going to hurt, or this is going to be bad for me. That's reflection. But my knowledge, my implicit knowledge says, this is right. And I'm going to continue with this because I know it's right. Means I have the knowledge, the implicit knowledge it's right. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, but it still means that the purpose of creation, I mean, it's something which, since I'm a very little boy, it keeps on coming up that I want to know who I am and what this whole existence is all about.
Right. Oh, no, you can't. You can. Okay, you'll know that implicitly, in that implicit place that I was talking about if you go deep down there. You won't need to know because you'll already know in knowing nothing. Now, just hear me. When it happens, you'll have the knowledge of what I'm saying. Right? This purpose, the purpose of this creation is about you being free of unhappiness and enjoying this creation. Is that fair enough? Wouldn't that be a good purpose to start with? Right. Okay then. Righto then. Now, we have reached the end of the afternoon. And I trust I've covered most of the topics that I mentioned. If not, we'll do it again some other time. We do them all, don't we? They say all the topics I'm going to talk about, and we go round the world, the universe, don't we? Into every area of our lives. And that's what we're here to do. To break up myself, to break up my fixed compartments, to open myself to the immediacy of life, to when I go outside of this room, to open myself to the birds, the trees, the wind, the sky, the passing traffic, to open myself to the passing people, to the whole context, not to part of it, not to what I've got my mind on going on doing, because that's taking it out of context, to open myself to the whole of it and walk down the street whole, with nothing out of context. Then I am indeed in the stillness and possibly in the absence. So my body is walking around. I can then enjoy my life in the senses, without reflecting on myself or wanting or trying. I can be open to life as it is. I think that just about sums up the whole day. I thank you for being with me. It is very good to see your earnestness, which I see in your bodies, and I see in the way that you just sit there, in your silence. Because the silence, the real silence, which is the beginning of stillness, is really absence. Thank you all for being with me. Goodbye for now.
One thing, Barry, does this indicate what you've been talking about for this last half hour, all together, it's all on tape?
Yes, yes it is. You just cut in, but it's all right, just at the right time, but I'd finished. So what I'm going to do now is what I usually do, Jack. I haven't seen you for a while, have I?
I was indisposed for the last meeting.
Yeah. Oh, that's all. As you know, then, I like to talk on for 10 or 15 minutes. Yes, we're a bit over.
I'm not particularly interested in your continuing the discussion of menopause for myself. But
yes, I wanted to say something
I'm
about
sure there
that.
are other people who would like to go into it.
Yeah. Okay. I put it on here because I wanted to do it. I had to wind up last time very quickly on it, and I didn't get deep enough into it for my likings. And I had it down here a little more about woman's change of life. Right. So I just spent 10 or 15 minutes talking about it, and I can always put it on at some other meeting. I'll repeat it then. Because these are the Course in Being tapes, which people all around the world are finding very helpful, apparently. to be with you, to get our interaction, the dynamic of the human psyche and the spirit, all intermingling rightly. Now, I might repeat a little of what I said before, but I'll just approach this whole thing of woman's, the climacteric and woman's life, in the latter age part of her life, is the change of life, what's called the change of life. And the significance of that is because the first climacteric in her life is when she enters puberty and then becomes a woman capable of producing life on earth. That's the first climacteric. And the second climacteric, in that sense, is her change of life when her periods and her bearing time is finished to bear children. That's finished then. So those are her years of being mother of the children. The change of life, where I come from, represents where she becomes mother of the mothers. She becomes more the divine woman. She symbolizes that. Each woman symbolizes this divine woman. Whether she becomes it or not depends on the matter and herself. The matter is what her body is composed of, the past that her body is composed of, plus the self or emotions that still linger in her from her own past since she was born. These things do, like a prism, P-R-I-S-M, do determine the power of the divine mother coming through the woman. What should have happened, if I can use that word, is that in her, when she enters puberty and gives birth to her children and has her children and is informed by guru or the grandfather and then the father of what life is about, and then she's handed over at the time of her husband, she's handed to her husband, she bears the children, and all the time she's being informed by guru about God and life and truth, and she is not losing herself in her children, but she puts God first, and that allows her to be straight with her children and bring her children up rightly and firmly and beautifully and loving, in honesty and truth, as she and her husband relate to each other in honesty and truth. Then still listening to guru, and which should be the grandfather and the father working in harmony, and the husband there husbanding her, and her giving her beautiful pure energies of woman to each by listening to the father and the grandfather, and loving the father and the grandfather as a reflection of the truth of God and the Spirit informing her, and her love going to them, so there becomes a great psychic harmony on earth. Then she goes through her life raising the children, making the sacrifices, raising them, and through her life until the bearing time finishes. By that time she will have, if there's any self in her, let's say, eliminated or straightened herself out inside all her hurts and wounds and whatever it was in her past. She will have straightened those out, and she will then be ready to be the mother of other mothers. She will not go to look to teach anyone. She will just be a living experience of the experience of woman in life. She has experienced all of life. She's experienced children. She's experienced making love. She's experienced whatever she has had to do in the world. She comes out the other end at 40, 45, 50. She comes out the other end a complete woman who has learned to put God first, who has been informed by guru of love, who has been loved rightly by right man, and she comes out and she then turns and faces back to the world and says, I am here to give to all of you, to all women and all my sons that would approach me. That's That's what she should be. Mother of all. And that's what I trust is where you are heading. As it is man's role to come through his life, and that great change that usually occurs to him in his early 40s, where he starts to break open all his concepts of what he thought he was and his life was about, he then starts to do the same thing. Only he breaks up. It takes longer for man to break up usually, because he forms so many constructs and compartments, because he's the thinker of the combination. So he has to break down all his concepts, but he should go through it, and eventually he turns round too to become the father, the grandfather really, the guru, who then is father to all his sons and daughters. And so the two of them sit, male and man and woman, both, as she can contribute that extraordinary thing that only woman can contribute, which is love as woman, and that great implicit knowledge in woman of love. So man contributes his great knowledge, which is the wisdom of life as man, who has to do so much in existence, and yet surrender it to God, to not try, and yet to do, and to not be afraid to do. He does that. He's the active principle, as he's the passive principle, and together they work beautifully like the in and out tide, like night and day. Well, that's in a perfect world, isn't it? But that's, every one of you is perfect in the sense that this is where you're going. And I trust that you don't just turn back on your grandchildren and just love your grandchildren like so many women do, and become mother to their grandchildren and their own children, and then they find the grandchildren don't really want to be with them very much, or they want to be with them as a break from their own mother or something of that nature. I trust that you will be a mother to the children next door, or anyone, or to anyone who comes to you, man, middle-aged man, or anything who comes to you, that you're able to talk from the truth of life of woman. Because no man knows what woman knows about love. No man. Woman is love. That's why all men are masters. Or let's say, all masters are men. There's no woman masters, you'll notice. Woman doesn't need to be a master. It is the likes of me, man, the projection, that has to sit up here and declare himself what he is. Woman doesn't do that. She's just love. And when she realizes what she is, love, and is that as an uninterrupted state of being, who wants to be master? It doesn't matter. They're two aspects of the same thing. But often this doesn't get discussed. Nobody knows the difference between why women can't be masters. As soon as they start being masters, they're starting to be the active principle. That's not for her. She is love. That doesn't mean that she's not very firm and very straight and able to attend to any situation and to be in command of the situation. For love is like that. It just means that, well, she doesn't strut around and sit up here. Now the other climacteric in a woman's life, of course, is the one that occurs every month. And that also is very important where I come from. When I say where I come from, because everybody mightn't agree, but I can't help that. This is where I come from. I just give it to you. Woman's monthly period is for the purpose of getting rid, symbolically and organically or biologically, of her unhappiness that gathers as a placenta. So because woman should not be in existence, the love principle that she is so fine, so utterly sensitive, so different to man, incredibly different to man, so subtle, so beautiful, so extraordinary, that really it's very difficult for it to be in existence and to walk through man's world and his violence and cruelty. To escape, she actually takes on a part of man and therefore loses her own contact with her own being in doing that. But she does that. Just about every woman takes on a part of man to cope. But her monthly period is supposed to be the shedding of an accumulation of the unhappiness of being in man's world, with all the frustrations and the sexuality that is forced upon her by the sheer being in a projective world. Because woman is not projective, as demonstrated by her genitals. She is not projective at all. She is nothing. It is man that is something, always endeavouring to get into nothing. But she is nothing, and that's the state of absence of love, of creativity, because woman is creative. She's the one that carries the young one. She's the one that the young one feeds off. Man's the starter, the projector, but she carries the baby. She does it. That is her symbol of her love, that she for 9 months carries it. That's her love. So every month, what she's supposed to do is to release her unhappiness through the placenta being discharged, and that carries away the waste material that she no longer requires that month to give birth, and also carries away her unhappiness. When she's when she's pregnant and no longer has periods, the unhappiness is going to stay in her body and also be absorbed by the child. That is why it is so important for a woman to free herself as much as possible of the unhappiness in herself and not to self-reflect. Because it's all going to be substantively, not substantially, but substantively communicated into the new life. And so the child will be born with certain dispositions of unhappiness, or that are only waiting for some external event to push that button, and that which has been inculcated into it psychically by the woman's unhappiness will then start to manifest. So it is very important for woman to be as still and as easy as she can be. And one of the reasons that she glows and feels so beautiful is that the frustration and unhappiness that's in her is already psychically being shared with the child. Well, that's about all I can say about it. So, oh yes, one of the things about the period is, at that time, it brings about a distinct change in her equilibrium. It's like an intermediate world that she enters. It's a peculiarly female world, where it's a shift or an altered state of consciousness that she's in which she's very sensitive and very difficult for man to understand her, because she just shifts out of that projective world, the normal mental world. Although she stays in it, there's a change that man finds rather difficult, because it's what I call illogical or logical, and man, being a rational creature, feels very uncomfortable at that time with woman, because she's sensitive to herself and she's sensitive to his self. finally, woman has to get as much equilibrium into that state, as much love into that state as possible, so that the altered state of consciousness is more for good than to disturb her, or to make her confused or demanding or emotional. And that's one of the things that have to be done by every woman here as much as possible. At the same time, when one woman does that, man himself, being her reciprocal, will also have to change for her to do that, and yet she has to change for him to do it. And that's part of where we are in this living of partnership that I talk of, in facing each other. Is there anyone else? So I'll just sum that up. The first thing, where woman comes into existence, she's only in the existence for, say, 30 years or 40 years as a child, a mother. The first climacteric is where that is possible for her, and she becomes particularly attractive to man, and she has to be able to deal with all that. She goes through producing her children and getting her experience until she comes up to 45, 50, or 40 to 50, and she goes through the climacteric in which that stops. She then turns round and is mother to all mothers, to all children, in some way or other that it's not for me to describe, but it happens. It happens in your own life according to your own lights. Man the same. He goes through the same thing. He goes through puberty. He has to overcome his sexuality. His woman has to overcome her periods, her altered states of consciousness, so man has to overcome his sexuality, which contributes to much to her unhappiness and her frustration with life on earth. And by the time he's 45 and he's going through these crises there, and he comes out the other end at 50 and on, he starts to turn outwards to become guru, to become father to all fathers, and to all sons and daughters, and not just his own. But if he remains emotional, or she remains emotional, they will then be attached to their own self, their own children, their own grandchildren, their own family. And that will cause familiarity, confusion and unhappiness in everybody in the family. Whereas if he or she opens themselves up, not to try to do anything, but to just be available from the very place that they have reached, then a different dynamic occurs. And they draw to themselves right people, right circumstances in which they can contribute, as man and woman should, to love and life and joy on this earth. All right then, thank you again for the second time for being with me, and see you next time.
You are listening to the Barry Long audio, No Choice, No Unhappiness, formerly titled Gold Coast Talk, July 1993. For more information, visit www.barrylong.org.